This episode is sponsored by Anchor. If you haven't heard of Anchor by Spotify, let me fill you in. So, Anchor has everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. You can record and edit your podcast straight from your computer or your phone, whichever works for you. And it's as simple as downloading the Anchor app or going to anchor.fm. And when hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many, many more. And the best part about Anchor is that it's 100% free. It's pretty much the ultimate podcast tool at the moment, and honestly, I haven't seen it getting enough attention. We use Anchor for this very podcast, and it has made things 10 times easier because, like I said, it's literally everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. Again, go to anchor.fm or download the Anchor app to get started.
What's up, guys? This is Lucid Rain, and today we are going to talk about cursed locations. And basically, not all of these places are necessarily cursed. We're just, for the sake of simplicity, we're going to say they're cursed. But some of them are just have very mysterious history behind them. So the first one we wanted to get into was the Catacombs of Paris. I don't know if you could call them cursed, but there's a lot of weird stuff that has happened in the catacombs. Like one of the things, and I didn't know this until recently, but they found, this is a long time ago, they found a video camera in the catacombs, and it actually had footage on it. So this is like actual found footage horror movie type shit. And basically it was just a man talking in the pitch black darkness of the catacombs, and the video just like abruptly ends. And that footage, there's this movie called As Above So Below. It's basically about a haunting in the catacombs or something like that. That movie was inspired by that footage. Whether that footage is real or not, I don't know, but apparently that movie was inspiration, was that actual footage that was found in the catacombs. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And if you haven't seen that movie, it was okay. I mean, I don't think you're missing out on much if you haven't seen it, to be honest, but it was alright.
So to elaborate on everything he said and to kind of put it in context, the catacombs are basically in Paris. I think graves were floating in certain places, and there was water. So rainwater was like, basically people were getting sick because rainwater would go over corpses and then go into wells and stuff like that. So people were getting sick.
Oh, wow.
And people were dying because of a disease. So they basically had to figure out a way to, a way to get rid of all the bodies and whatnot, because it was causing health concerns. It was killing a lot of people because of the conditions. So they started digging down into the ground. So basically, it's a giant maze or labyrinth of dead bodies, essentially.
Which is just a pretty eerie concept to begin with.
Yeah, and it's all underground. Some of it is probably pretty well maintained, but a good majority of it is kind of lost to time. And
yeah,
there is crazy things where like certain houses will literally like lead to the catacombs. Like you can get into the catacombs, people's basements and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I have a story about that I want to get into later.
There have been cave-ins where people's like houses have basically collapsed into it. I'm pretty sure it's off limits, but there are people like, there's like criminal groups and just groups that literally do stuff down there. And I wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't like trading of illicit substances and even probably people.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case, because it's such a complex area. Like, it's a labyrinth, so you could probably get away with that down there, honestly. And isn't like some of it like a tourist attraction? Like, you can go down there, right? Like,
yeah, I think there's a couple places they do tours and whatnot, but
yeah, it's probably a very specific, strict path you have to be on, I would assume, because they don't want people getting lost down there. That's the last thing they want. So that's an assumption, though.
Yeah, so there's one story of two kids that snuck down there, and they ended up getting lost, and they were gone for a couple of weeks with people finding them, and finally they found them. And when they brought them in for questioning, they didn't say a single thing. Like, they were shell-shocked. And from what I understand, I don't think they ever talked about what they saw or what happened to them or why they were so, like, petrified. And I'm sure running around in the dark without food or water for a week.
Yeah, that's
with
what I was
everything
thinking.
damp and moist and very tight spaces, and there'd be nowhere for you to get comfortable. You wouldn't be able to sleep, so they're probably like...
That would probably drive someone mad, yeah.
And very scared to whether they're getting out of it or not. Having no clue where you're going, and...
Yeah, walking around in pitch black darkness, like, I mean, I assume they had, like... Did they have, like, phones or anything like that for light or any sort of source of light or anything?
Yeah, but once you're somewhere for that long, your
Oh,
phone's
yeah.
gonna be dead.
Yeah, your phone's gonna die. But, so, they're probably walking around in pitch black darkness for, like, who knows how long, probably for a majority of that time. Which would drive anyone crazy, I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, if you were planning on going there, you would probably be prepared enough to have like a small bag,
Lantern
small
or something.
Yeah, like 10 flashlights, battery backups for all the flashlights.
Yeah, that's like, I mean, and if who knows, I've heard people say like, you hear voices down there, so that doesn't really help either, if that was the case. Running around in pitch black darkness and the place is messing with your head, it's like, no thank you.
It's basically an open wall, massive cemetery.
Yeah. It's insane. Apparently it's like insanely big too, which is just wild to think about. Like just a giant like grave or cemetery that's just goes on for like miles. It's like, that's wild.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how big it is actually.
I'm pretty sure it's quite a few miles, if I'm not mistaken.
It's probably the entirety of Old Paris, like, pretty much.
It could be. I can't imagine getting like lost down there. That's horrible. There was a guy who I have his name. His name was Filbert Sorry, I'm probably saying that completely wrong, but whatever. He went to go to the cellar of a hospital to get liquor, and somehow, some way, he ended up in the catacombs. I don't know how that happens, but he couldn't find his way back. I don't even know, like, I'm really confused as to how that happens, but anyway, he ended up dying, and they found him 11 years later, which, if that doesn't say how confusing that place it must be, I don't know what does. How does someone walk down somewhere? I don't get it. I just kind of don't get the whole situation. Like, it just confuses me.
Well,
kind of gives me a headache.
He was going to get liquor, you said, right?
Yeah, in a cellar.
So he could have already been really drunk.
That's true. That's very true.
And
that, in fact, that's probably what it was.
It could literally be like they even made a little doorway to get into the catacombs, because that could, if it was a hospital, maybe I guess it would depend on how the hospital is. But if it was a hospital that's like really old, or was like something before that, where if there was a body, they would like instantly put it in the catacomb. That would make sense for them to have access point.
I guess
and
so.
If you're drunk and you're looking, and then you're just, who knows? Like, there's a lot of old tunnels there, I guess. So is it really unrealistic to think, to get like a catacomb and a cellar mixed up if you're really inebriated, and then you just keep walking, and all of a sudden you're somewhere in an entirely different world?
Yeah, he had to be drunk, and like, that's the fact that he got lost, like so lost that he wasn't found for that long. That just shows that he must have gone pretty deep into it by that point, because if he just got lost around the entrance of the cellar or something, they would have found him like easily, probably. I don't know about easily, but they would have found him within a reasonable time frame. But they found him 11 years later. That dude had to have been like somewhere where no one hasn't been in a very long time.
Yeah, well, if someone is lost and then they figure out they're lost after 30-40 minutes, they probably already walked, half a mile. And if you're a mile away from something and you make a wrong turn, you're probably never getting back there.
Yeah, you're probably just kiss that goodbye right then and there. That's one of the worst fates, because you're just left in the dark with nothing but your mind, and then just to starve and then die. Like, that's horrible.
Yeah, so no wonder it's considered
Yeah,
a cursed place. I mean,
like,
it's pretty
it's-
terrifying.
it'd be a kind of cool place to visit, honestly, but like, I wouldn't want to be down there for that long. But yeah, we're at 11 minutes, so we should probably do the next place. So we have the Island of Dead Dolls in Mexico.
You could do
Which,
that one.
yeah, all right. So I think the story of this place was that I think a family was just like living on this island or something for some reason, and their daughter drowned and died or something, and after that the father went crazy and like started picking dolls out of the trash and hanging them up on trees and just getting all these dolls, right? And the reason he was doing this was apparently to appease her spirit, because she was haunting him, and that's what she wanted him to do for some reason. So he just continuously put dolls everywhere. And if you look at this place nowadays, it's literally dolls all over the place. It's creepy as hell. Like, there's literally like probably hundreds of dolls in this place.
Yeah, I think everything that I've seen it's like a little island, and it's just completely surrounded by water, obviously, and kind of a little canal. So if you were going through it, it'd be like a haunted boat ride attraction where you have land on both sides of you, and you just see like an island with a bunch of hanging dolls and doll heads, and in the middle of Mexico.
Imagine coming across that and having no prior knowledge about it. Like, you would be like, what on earth?
Yeah, you'd be very uneasy.
Like, that would be so weird and eerie. And people say the dolls move, and like their eyes and their heads move and shit. And like, I guess the logic behind that, well, I'm saying logic for some supernatural shit, but quote unquote logic behind that would be that the girl's spirit is there, I guess. So I don't know. It's all really weird. Like, I think that's one of the weirdest ones on this list, just by concept. It's just an island of dolls. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, do you know what part of Mexico that is?
In the Zachi. I'm not even gonna attempt to pronounce that. But yeah, Mexico City. And like, I don't know, certain stories you hear are just like, it's just people trying to connect the dots and like make sense of something that's really weird, so they just make up a story. But like, I mean, that's kind of insane that no one, at least to my knowledge, has an explanation for all the dolls.
Did anyone so is there information on if that gentleman still lives there, or if it was abandoned? Or
that guy, I'm pretty sure the guy he either just died from natural causes or he killed himself or something like that. I don't think he's still alive. I don't think he's still there.
Yeah, then that is pretty bad. Like,
and of course, I mean, it makes sense that he killed himself, because I mean, the guy was clearly not in his right mind if he's putting up dolls to appease his dead daughter's spirit. Like, clearly he's not, like, I think it was his daughter at least. Clearly he's not like in the right headspace. Which, I mean, I guess you wouldn't be if someone very close to you died, but that's just, it's kind of scary to think about that. That's what, if this is true, that's what he like ended up doing.
Yeah, it's kind of like I guess finding a hermit's shack in the woods that just has a bunch of wild stuff all over it.
And it's kind of weird assuming this story is true. How is he just finding like tons and tons of dolls? Like, apparently he just searched trash to get all the dolls, and sometimes it was just pieces of dolls, not full dolls. How is he finding so many of them? Is my question. Like, I feel like that's really odd.
What trash is he searching?
I don't know. That's what I read, is that he gets the dolls and the pieces of the dolls from like trash that he finds. So I don't know. I honestly don't even know. No, okay. His body was discovered in he drowned in a canal, which is the exact same place that the little girl drowned at, apparently. And apparently it's a big tourist attraction, like that specific place. Apparently there's so many dolls on the island because tourists come and hang up dolls too, because to honor the guy and the girl, because that's what he did to honor the dead girls to begin with. So people were like, yeah, to honor his death, we're gonna put dolls up for him. So that's what the tourists do. So there's actually more dolls on that island than what he put up originally. And I don't know how to feel about that. I don't know. They're kind of messing with, like, I feel like something like that you shouldn't really mess with, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of antagonizing.
Yeah, kind of don't like the idea of that. But yeah, we can do the next one.
Alright, so the next place we're going to be talking about is Povegalia, which you'll probably notice a lot of these are islands, and I guess that kind of makes sense. Because when you think island, you think of isolated, so if something goes wrong,
No one knows.
you're fucked.
Yeah.
And most of these places have to do with isolation, which, obviously makes sense, because if something goes wrong, people probably aren't going to live to tell the tale. So, especially Povegalia. So, Povegalia is an island off of Italy. I think it's around Sicily area, but I can't tell you for sure off the top of my head. It's basically when the plague was happening, that was an island where they were just putting bodies. And so everyone knows the plague doctor mask is basically like this mask with this really long beak and had goggles, and like it basically looks like a giant like bird mask.
Yeah.
And those were which basically plague doctor masks. And what the people do, they would wear those and they would shove a bunch of spices and stuff in the beak. That way, when they're around people with the plague, they thought that would keep them from getting it. And they would just row these bodies to Povegalia, this island. And I believe they burned the bodies. I think there was a hospital there at one point. But basically, that island probably had more deaths per square inch than any island in the world. Because they would just be bringing people that are dying from the plague over and letting them suffer there. Mass graves, burning bodies. I think they had a hospital there at one point. That might have been later, though, but I can't really remember. And now it is basically abandoned, and I don't think people are allowed to go on there.
I mean, is there any chance that the plague could, like, persist after all this time, you think, or no?
Well, I think we had vaccines and stuff.
That's true, yeah, probably.
Anyway, that took care of that, so I don't think we're really that worried. But there are people that die of the plague every single year.
Yeah,
like, every rare disease that you, like, will hear about, it seems like there's at least, like, 5 people that die of it every single year.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure why.
Like, how they're getting it?
But I'm not really sure why it's like completely abandoned and you're not allowed to go there. I guess it might just be government property. Like, the government probably bought it.
Yeah, or there's something they know that we don't.
Yeah, which, I mean, just the idea of it is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that's
like,
pretty
it's basically
insane.
an island of death and disease. Like, that's all it is.
Yeah, that shit must have been brutal back then.
I mean, if you got a disease or an infection or anything, there's basically no medicine, so
yeah, you're
really,
basically
it's
done
gonna
for.
get worse.
Yeah, kind of
You're
just
gonna
fucked.
suffer pretty much.
Yeah, because they had no had nothing to cure that stuff back then, so.
Yeah, so it's an island in Italy, and I think it's considered the most haunted island in the world, which obviously would make sense considering.
Yeah, I guess it would make sense considering it has such a high number of deaths.
Yeah, absolutely ridiculous. That's I've been like aware of that place for a long time, and I even had joined Facebook groups like of people just talking about it. For a while, I was really interested in it. I'm not sure why, but I was.
It's pretty interesting. I think it's interesting.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool place, I'd say.
So, do you want to do the next area or place?
Yeah. All right. So the next one we're going to be talking about is in Egypt, and it's King Tut's tomb, and this is an actual curse. So this is a basically certified cursed location, not haunted. Like there's an actual curse connected to this one. So November 4th, 1922, a British archaeologist and his crew discovered King Tut's tomb in the Valley of the Kings in Egypt. And basically, from what I understand, there was an inscription on the wall that said, "This is, if you disturb the resting place, there is a curse. You will be cursed." And everyone involved had misfortune. Find them, and you could. It's kind of like one of those things you say, well, accidents kind of happen, and if you have a group of 20 people, chances are accidents could happen to them, and it's not really out of the possibility. But I know a couple of them kind of like got really sick pretty soon after that, and then all the rest of them kind of had like really bad fortunes. Like they died in ways that are like not conventional at all. That it's like,
Yeah,
how
I mean,
did this happen?
it gets to a point where it's not just like a coincidence anymore with stuff like that.
Like if it's like every single, maybe not every single one, but like a good 8 out of 10 people that have disturbed this place
Either die in some mysterious way or just have really horrible luck afterward, then yeah, I'd say like there's something to it, because that kind of stuff just doesn't happen all the time, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty famous curse. Most people know about it and have heard basically what happened.
Yeah, I mean, if you're one of the first people, what are they called? I guess archaeologists. I don't even know. Someone who studies
Yeah.
that. If you're one of those,
archaeologists.
yeah. If you're one of those first people to discover it, you've had no prior knowledge of the curse because you're the first one. So those people were probably just extremely unlucky to have
Yeah, well,
come across it.
I guess if you read a warning, and I'm sure all that stuff's very vague, and I'm sure the dialect and the way people talk and kind of just sayings and inflections and all that stuff is entirely different. So reading something, you'd probably be like, you'd probably just be like, pishesh, who cares? Like,
Well, what, like, is it in like hieroglyphics or something? Like, is there actual warnings?
I thought there was an actual warning that said like, do not disturb this tomb.
I mean,
pretty much.
there probably was, but I'd assume it'd be in either. Yeah, because King Tut, that was a long time ago, so that's probably hieroglyphics, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure what writing system it would necessarily be, but
I don't know. But I mean, it's not like they haven't decoded that stuff by now. At least I don't. I think they have.
I think they already knew what it was and what it wasn't.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I would say that's probably something that you would have to be able to do. Like, if you're an Egyptologist and you're literally studying, you're going into different historical sites, I don't know how you wouldn't be able to, like, reading that stuff would have to be a prerequisite, pretty much.
Yeah, right.
Or you would have no business being down there.
Yeah, I would assume so. So I mean, but if they read a warning, of course they're just gonna shrug it off. Like they wanna unearth this stuff for the sake of science or whatever. So there basically nothing could have prepared them for that. That's just how. I mean, you know how those people are. Like they are not superstitious. They are not. They're very scientific people. So they're not. That's the last thing on their mind is that there's any truth to that warning, if they see
Yeah.
one.
I mean, I am pretty superstitious, but I think it kind of goes without saying, the fact that we're willing to talk about this stuff and they're so fascinated by it, that when a situation arises that's kind of eerie or creepy or mysterious, I pretty much always walk towards it. Almost
Yeah.
exclusively, like, walk towards it. Like, I can't help myself.
Yeah, I mean, it depends for me, but I'm kind of the same way. Like, if something's, I don't know, curiosity killed the cat, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm pretty conflicted with that type of thing. So I'm like,
I am too.
of course, yeah, I like this type of thing a lot, but I also kind of do get sketched out. Like, I kind of sketch myself out with the situation usually.
Yeah, it just so happens that my curiosity overtakes my fear. Not in every situation, but most situations I'm just like, I just want to know what this is about. So,
Yeah, I mean that's one of those. Obviously, if I was an Egyptologist and doing dig sites and stuff like that, I would undoubtedly go in there. I mean, you search for something for a really long time,
yeah,
finally find it. Yeah, you're gonna go in there. So
right.
even if they thought the warnings were real, I would say they probably would have looked at it either way.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, you make the discovery of a lifetime, and you're gonna say no, I'm not
Yeah,
gonna check it out.
exactly. Yeah,
No, you're gonna check it out. I mean, that's a huge accomplishment finding something
yeah,
like that.
yeah,
So yeah, basically everyone that was involved in the discovery and the unearthing had serious misfortune befall them and really struggled pretty much. Like, had horrible things, horrible unexplainable things. And that's kind of something, basically that's kind of like the mummy's curse. Like, it's popular media. Like,
yeah,
a lot of horror movies and stuff like that came out of that.
yeah. That is a pretty played upon thing. I mean that's there's a lot of stuff like that, like ancient like objects just being like cursed, like stuff like that. That's pretty
Yeah,
common.
which we just discussed a lot of those things in a previous episode not that long
Yeah.
ago.
But yeah, should we do the next place?
Yeah, we can do the next place.
So, Ayers Rock, which is also called Uluru. Where is this? Hold on, let me look at
This
where
is
it's.
in Australia.
Oh, okay. So, apparently this mountain, or I guess it'd be classified as a mountain, is cursed to the point where not everyone, I guess, but a lot of people who have climbed it have just mysteriously died of heart failure, like specifically heart failure, like they no other reason. They didn't fall to their deaths or anything like that. There's been tons of people who have climbed the mountain, all of a sudden heart failure. It's like Death Note or something. Like,
Yeah,
that's really weird.
so basically, it is a holy place for Aboriginal tribes in Australia, and they hold the utmost respect to it. And
Yeah. It's
it's
sacrilegious
somewhere
to
that they
climb
don't
it.
go. Like, it's a holy place. They don't go. They revere it. So
Yeah.
I'm sure people going and
You're not supposed to be
exploring
climbing
it
it.
and doing shit, yeah, it's kind of like that. Like, they don't do that. They don't believe in that at all. So there
I
has
don't
to
know
be a
why.
reason. Maybe it's something that has to do with like electromagnetic fields or something, and that messing with your your heartbeat pattern and all that stuff, and
Yeah,
that's why there's.
possibly.
That's the only thing that I could think. Maybe there's a bunch of a bunch of anomalies happening there in age, in older times. A lot of people would go there and die, so then they just like they said, well, it's cursed or it's a holy land or something because that if they need to give respect to it or something. I mean, that would make sense if they basically revered it because a bunch of people are dying and they kind of grew a superstition to it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And also,
I mean,
you know how people like people would take like rocks and stuff from there as like I guess like a souvenir, and those people will be hit with misfortune. Like they've get so many people have taken rocks from there and gotten, like their life will turn upside down or whatever. They will literally mail the rocks back. Apparently that's a thing that's happened. They literally have gave the rock, either went there and put the rocks back, or they mailed them back. I don't know how mailing them back even works. That's what the thing I've read said. I don't know how that works, but that's what they said. So if someone's giving the rocks back, something had to have happened to them that made them think, all right, I shouldn't have done that.
yeah.
Because like I
Imagine
said,
that. You picking up something that most people would consider absolutely insignificant, like a rock.
yeah.
And,
Yeah, I mean, you never guessed that that would have some effect on you.
I mean, it makes sense because you're disturbing the peace of the place.
Yeah,
If
right.
it's somewhere that wants to be left, if it's something that wants to be left alone, and you're disturbing it and you're taking parts of it for your own, like, I mean, that's not respecting the land.
Exactly. But people who don't come from these places, they don't have respect for the land. They don't come there, so they don't care. They'll climb. Yeah, it's sacrilegious to climb it. They climb it anyway. It's sacrilegious to
and
take stuff from it. They
that's
take it
where
anyway.
That's kind of where the irony is. Like, if you go somewhere, you have to respect the place, or, kind of like this is a situation that is nothing like it, but it's a current event, so I guess I'll bring it up. Like Brittany Griner breaking a law in Russia, and then everyone being up in arms that she got arrested and detained. Like, you have to understand the customs and basically how people are in a certain place, or even how like the auras are there in nature, and just how things are done and superstitions and all that stuff. Because if you don't, you end up in serious trouble.
Yeah, I mean, just because you don't, it doesn't matter how foreign something is to you. Just because it's foreign to you doesn't mean it's foreign to everyone. Like, you kind of have to treat it with some level of respect.
Well, here's the thing.
Yeah.
Imagine you're someone that likes haunted houses or something, right? Say you go somewhere and there's certain lore that basically tells you don't do this in this house, and you go do it anyway. Like, it's your own fault for not having respect. And then when something bad happens because you didn't show respect to the source material, and some misfortune or something bad happens upon you, it's kind of like, what were you expecting? You do something, you have to understand. You have to do your research and your due diligence before you go do something, or you're gonna get fucking bent over.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happened to these people apparently. I mean, they're taking shit, and they go home, something horrible happens to them, and they're like, man, I must have really screwed up. I'm gonna return this now, because maybe, and even then, that doesn't guarantee that it's gonna stop either. You returning the item or whatever it is you took.
Well, here's the thing. What if somebody says they're gonna return it and they don't? Or, like, where do you even send it? Is it just like
I don't know.
It happens enough that people are like, all right, well, I'll go put this back in the mountain and hope that I'm in the good graces of whatever it is. Like, that sounds like not a very foolproof way.
Yeah, I don't know. Another really weird thing about Ayers Rock, it'll be like a heat wave. Apparently this happens like every so often, like a super heat wave, and it'll go a long time without raining there.
and then it'll finally rain, and literally the rain will only be on Ayers Rock, and that's it. Like, you can look at apparently everything around it will be dry, just completely dry, which is like kind of insane to think about if that's true. It kind of gives it this like this living like feel to that mountain. Like, it's as if the mountain is like nature's spirit or something. Like, it's weird, kind of cool,
Well,
but it's also
it
kind of
is
scary.
a holy place. I mean, there's a lot of mountains in the U.S. that are kind of sacred and have similar things. We're gonna talk about one, I guess next. Anyway, but yeah, it's a sacred Aboriginal place, and it does make sense. Like, if you don't respect something, what's gonna happen to you is the worst. You know, like.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that the people that this is not foreign to, the people who are already there, there's a reason they believe what they believe, I'm sure. So, I mean, but, you know, people come in and just like, I don't believe any of that shit. I'm gonna do what I want. It's like, alright, dickhead, like, you do that and get cursed for the rest of your life, and we'll see how that goes for you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why you would go somewhere just to disrespect. I mean,
Well, they're
only
not
are you
doing it
disrespecting
on
someone.
purpose.
Well, it's kind of how you're saying. If someone knew the backstory and still went and did that, like, you would say, if you really go out of your way to disrespect not only history, but a group of people's culture and belief,
Yeah.
then you deserve whatever the fuck happens to you.
Yeah. Yeah, if you already had prior knowledge of the place, you definitely do deserve that, because you already knew what they believed in and you still disrespected it, so I just don't... You had it coming, basically, with that one. But yeah, we are at 47 minutes, so we could probably do one more. So, this next one is called... It's called Nahanni National Park Reserve. It's also called the Headless Valley, which is a very eerie name. And apparently, there's been people that went there to find gold a long time ago, and they never came back, and they found them near a river headless, and there was two of them. And apparently there's been multiple people who have gone there and end up headless.
Basically, it is a reserve in Canada that is also a sacred land for basically native tribes in the area, and it's somewhere that they do not go. And there's a bunch of mystique and different rumors and different things about it that they believe, and basically superstitions that they've had. And they leave it alone, call it a sacred place, and say that there's creatures there. And so there's a lot of... This is one of the more kind of like superstitious and kind of paranormal out of the list.
Wait, who doesn't go there? The people who live there?
Yeah, like the indigenous tribes that have lived there for, a pretty extended amount of time. They say there's been... So, to put it in perspective, there's... Where people have seen is on this river, and it's in Canada, and it's a river, and I think it has pretty rough current and rapids, and there's this huge wall on one part of the river. I think basically this huge wall, and there's cutouts in the stone, and people have said that they have seen figures in these cutouts in the wall. And there's actually folklore from the Native American tribes that talks about basically creatures that live there that are like supernatural in nature. And
that's creepy
then
as fuck.
There's been multiple cases of basically people camping out there. And it's not like, oh, you go to this place one time and you end up headless, but there was people that were looking for gold. Like, there was I think, like you said, two brothers that went looking for gold, ended up headless, basically just like decapitated and there was a big police search, and it was something that they like talked about for a while. Like people were searching just because like the way they were decapitated was really weird, kind of like unexplainable.
I don't believe they found the heads at all, if I'm not mistaken.
There was also another case of a guy that basically kind of made a log cabin out there, and basically lived there for a couple years searching for gold, and eventually he ended up, I think he would go there, live there, search for gold, work, come back to where he was from, and then he would do that a couple times, and eventually they found him headless in around the same area. And I think it's basically happened to anyone that had a significant stay there. And there's a bunch of stories of people kind of going through camping and going through that, like they hear really weird noises, and there's a bunch of folklore and different myths and mystique about it. And there's a fair amount of people that have testimony saying they experienced a lot of weird stuff there.
So has everyone who's died there been there for a long period of time, basically? Or is it just
I think
like
it was people that had extended stays there, not just like someone visiting for like 4 days camping out. I don't think there's too many of those, but I do know multiple people have died and ended up headless, and then other people that went missing there. Like I think it's one of those spots that a fair amount of people have went missing.
Yeah, that's creepy as fuck. Especially the thing where it's like there's like holes in the walls, and there's just like creatures in there. Like what is that's really creepy.
Yeah, and it's in Canada, and I think it's somewhat up north Canada. So you really would only be able to go there during summer months, and there's no towns super close or anything, and it's basically, it's a national forest, so they don't like just have a bunch of things. So honestly, I don't even know if you'd be able to. It'd be one thing to maybe like take a drone and try and fly it into one of those, but I don't know where you would stand that you'd be able to do that. But I'm surprised no one has thought about that, because I'm not sure
that would be really interesting. Why doesn't someone do that? Like get a drone? I mean, like you said, where would you stand? I guess you would be, because some of those drones have a lot of range. So, I mean, I don't know though, because it's an island, isn't it? Or
I don't think it's just a forest or like
okay.
a national forest. But also, there might be something where the Canadian government prohibits something like that.
Yeah,
and maybe there'd be like legal repercussions. And the only reason I would think they would usually governments know about things that are being hidden. So if say the Canadian government, if there was natives saying, natives to that land saying, this is what this is, and here's why, and here's the extenuating circumstances, the Canadian government is not that much different than the United States. They would have explored that, had teams in there, and probably discovered, any of the anomalous things there. And then that's where they come up with rules and say, hey, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't be here at certain times, you can't camp here, you can
that does
through,
make
but you
sense.
can't stay, and stuff like that. And then they basically make it safe to the public, essentially, or they make it to where if you figure it out, you're probably not going to be alive to tell it, or like you're going to be in some trouble because they'll discover you discovering whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like there's been stories of basically people stumbling across caves and like holes in mountains and holes in caves, and then having intense headaches and basically hear frequencies that like basically pierce your ears and make you nauseous and basically make you pass out. And that's government technology, that they basically have weapons that shoot off different frequencies that incapacitate you. So it'll be like a pounding headache, and then you basically have to like leave. And there've been people that have, whether they're in the desert and find a cave, or like a
Yeah, I've
forest
heard
and find
about
like a
that.
mountain cave, and then they hear that, and then you pretty much leave. And there was actually a story of one guy who I think he was either in Nevada or Nevada, New Mexico, or Arizona. It was one of those three states, and he was someone who did cave exploration and explored the desert a lot. And he came across the cave and discovered that, and then he like went back home and posted about it, and people were telling him to get a GoPro and explore it again. And
Yeah.
he said,
I know this
I'm going to
story.
go explore this, and he never came back. So, I mean, it makes sense. If you come across a government base or a base of anything, like, I've been reading a lot of stuff about ETs and whatnot, and basically speculation that there's a bunch of different bases for a bunch of different things. Even if you came across something that's positive, if you came across the base, the chances of them just letting you walk out when you've seen something are
Yeah.
probably low. Even if it's a positive beam, I mean, they're not going to just let you say what you saw. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, they don't want to
especially
risk
if
it
they
getting
don't-
out, I guess. So.
yeah, especially if you hadn't recorded, or I'm sure most of those, even the United States government has stuff that I'm sure it's something that would have enough that would be able to interfere with technology. So it's kind of like the same thing with sometimes with ghosts and stuff like that.
Yeah, like, and the thing, I have heard that story about the guy saying he was gonna check it out and then never coming back. It makes sense that they would have some like not so obvious thing to drive people away, because I mean, I don't know, on a physical level, if something's like disturbing you and giving you a headache or artificially making you feel uncomfortable, then you're gonna leave most likely. You're not gonna be like, oh, that's. You're probably not gonna stick around and be like, huh. I wonder if there's I don't know, something hidden over here. I mean, maybe you'd think that, but the average person would be like, all right, I'm just gonna get out of here. I don't know what this is about. So that's actually a smart way to like keep people out of something.
Yeah, I mean,
I think
I've
that's
been
exactly
planning
what that is.
I've been planning a trip to the Mammoth Cave system. Or at least, like, I've kind of been planning a trip to it. And I almost, like, I'd be going to a part that's kind of not regulated and not touristy. So I'd be basically finding different cave mouths myself, at least what my plan would be.
Caves scare me to death. I don't like caves. That's the one thing I would not explore.
I've been planning it, and I almost am kind of excited about the thought like that. Like, if I come across something like that, if I come across a buzzing noise like that that's disorienting, I would say I'd probably be excited because I'm like, well, that means I found something that I was not meant to find.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's kind of the whole point. Like, if you're looking for something, the answer is probably scary as shit. Like,
Yeah.
in reality.
Yeah, I mean, that Headless Valley sounds absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, I really like the idea of it. Honestly, I kind of wish that I could go there.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like it'd be cool to like I feel like it'd be cool to experience something weird, but like if it's gonna kill me, obviously not. But like just to experience something weird that you could just tell everyone about and live to tell the tale. I feel like that'd be cool. But like I feel like it ends there for me.
Well, guys, this is Lucid Brain. Hope you guys enjoyed. I will have a link, if you're on YouTube, that is, to all of these places in the description, most likely. So you can check those out if you want. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.